Welcome to Facts for Real videos. We will see an advanced civilization hidden in Antarctica. These ancient builders' preferred architectural types were step pyramids. They obviously came from the same advanced culture, it seems. Yet, because they are located in entirely different corners of the world, this issue needs to be addressed. There is a complex in Mexico. The Kokor Sanctuary was found in Cambodia, and the Pyramid of Jose is located in Egypt. You can learn all of that from textbooks. Several prehistoric tribes constructed these strikingly similar step pyramids independently of one another. The strangest thing, though, is how much time has passed between these nearly identical structures, hundreds or possibly thousands of years. Supposing they were indeed made by representatives of the same ancient and a distance of half the planet. Advanced civilization with a level of development close to the 20th century that could easily cross the oceans. There are far too many questionable buildings, according to scientists. Ohio, a state in the United States, cannot adequately explain its appearance or doesn't even try. That is such an odd hill that people have created. The Great Serpent Mound is its name. The antiquity of the complex, which spans 440 meters, is still a subject of debate among academics. According to the widely recognized theory, individuals from the Fort Ancient civilization supposedly constructed the snake-shaped mound around the year 1000 CE. Simply said, nobody else could have done it. Yet not everyone is sold on this version. Graham Hancock, a British journalist, had doubts about these findings and chose to carry out a different investigation close to the serpent. He discovered an extensive complex of prehistoric burials associated with the Adena civilization, which is 1.5 thousand years earlier than Ford's. The Serpent Mount appears to be perched on the ridge of a long-ago meteorite impact crater, which is the most astounding thing of all. The samples that were analyzed indicated that this collision didn't happen earlier than 125,000 years ago. Leaving a strong magnetic anomaly in its wake in this region, surveyors were able to identify with accuracy. Compass needles actually went crazy. Ancient people performed the same task on the Serpent Mound a couple of thousand years ago without the need of any specific tools. The curves of the peak function as an astronomical calendar. The head of the serpent aligns with the summer solstice, and according to the conventional story, all this was erected by people who could only construct huts and sharpen spears for hunting. Now, what if this archaic society was just occupied? Given that we discovered indications of an undiscovered ancient civilization with incredible construction skills in another part of the planet, it is especially remarkable that the more ancient complex was created by someone else far earlier. Turkish temple complex at Göbekli Tepe. According to the initial assessment, it was only constructed around 2,000 years ago. Only specialists would have continued to find Göbekli Tepe interesting if at least 16 additional old underground caverns hadn't been found. Hauls towards the conclusion of the excavations. The complex's overall area may be up to 20 square kilometers. And that's all we've been able to find, which is about equivalent to half of Manhattan. According to the investigation, the earliest holes belong to the 10th millennium BC. Hunter-gatherers still thrived on Earth at that period, according to scientists, and that's even before the development of any modern civilization. People band together to construct the Göbekli Memorial. There is no plausible explanation in current science as to how our ancestors could have received it. The message sent in a group that started a new era for humanity. A scholar at the Polytechnic University of Milan named Giulio Magli also found that Göbekli Tepe was not a temple. However, a true observatory, which is why the intermediate lines between the complex's center monoliths are aligned with Sirius azimuths on the summer solstice. What could stop these unknown ancient people from touring the planet if they were so knowledgeable about astronomy and construction technology? An advanced ancients version is supported by ancient maps. On the map of 1513, Antarctica is visible as a result of a civilization that was actively exploring the world. The old chart offers further questions, such as how it got there if our mariners only discovered the fifth continent 300 years later. The Antarctica shore as an illustration. With astounding realism, the continent that is currently covered by ice is represented as though someone knew what it looked like in the distant past. Only in the 1960s of the 20th century was it possible for contemporary science to explore such specifics. But who might conceivably outlive us by hundreds or even thousands of years? perhaps the creators of the massive structures on the surface of Antarctica. This is a portion of an Ellsworth satellite image. These mountains were captured in 2016. They are Antarctic relics. The intriguing map was made by a shipwrecked advanced civilization in Metropolis. The Great Pyramids of Giza are nearby, and Piri Reis claimed that he had copied his sample from an extremely old text from the Library of Alexandria, which has since been destroyed. The descendants' builders left thorough instructions that were later lost. Nevertheless, the 16th century's outlines are just the beginning. On the same map, South America, which was still understudied at the time, is likewise remarkably accurate. However, on the map of Pure Race, their inconsistencies, even with our current knowledge of the world on it, suggest that in ancient times someone not only saw this piece of land from the sea, but also managed to get deep into the continent. Mountains, rivers, and some lakes are even marked on the continent itself. A narrow isthmus connects South America with Antarctica. But hold on, could it be that these continents were actually joined in South America tens of thousands of years ago, under the reign of an unknown ancient civilization? We've also found a lot more pyramids, and we continue to locate more of them now thanks to recent study searches. The region in southern around a settlement. Bolivia is suddenly hidden by the jungle when employing LiDAR scanners. They discovered an intricate system of canals as well as the ruins of many. Archaeologists discovered that the stone pyramids belonged to a hitherto undiscovered civilization. The culture of the Khazarabes predates the Aztecs and the Incas by 1,000 years. It appears that Native Americans were explicitly taught sophisticated construction techniques, which other civilizations eventually borrowed. Geologists, however, strongly disagree. They contend that this theory on the pyramids in Antarctica does not reflect human activity. However, the famed alpine Matterhorn mountain is a case of a particular erosion. But, the discovery of several old man-made monuments throughout the world does not affect the reality that only one pyramid was a hoax. They all seem disturbingly similar to one another. On one of the Indonesian islands, the ruins of the Nung Padang temple no longer appear to be as magnificent. Though back then, similar to the Great Serpent Mound, it was a pyramid. Considering that the complex is situated inside of an old crater, scientists estimate its age to be no more than 9,000 years. However, a recent lower boundary day for radiocarbon analysis may push back another 20,000 years from the construction's planned start date. Scientists argue that because the last glacial period was at its worst at that time, people were obviously not capable of building massive memorial complexes. But if we try to incorporate Gunung Padang into our traditional history, aren't we missing something significant? For a developed civilization, the Ice Age is less terrifying than it is for hunter-gatherers. After all, these people could still traverse the globe and build their pyramids. These were located somewhere besides Egypt. But anywhere in the world. Here is the mount, and this is the Prasad box from the Chum Krong Temple in Cambodia. These structures share striking similarities with the Dakota Sanctuary in the northwest and the Sardinia Palace in Italy. The construction in Argolis, Greece, has linked its boulders. Almost impossible for a human hair to fit through. Without any fastening solutions in the area, through the joints. Similar stonework was discovered in the walls of the Peruvian city of Cusco. Despite the fact that the Atlantic Ocean and more than 11,000 kilometers divide these areas. We may observe the same pattern if we examine the pyramid monuments in Egypt, Japan, and even on Easter Island. Even these complexes' sculptures have characteristics with Bolivian and Turkish antiques. Without a highly established infrastructure, it is impossible to reach Indonesia and Easter Island. The fact that the oldest fleet is totally unintentional. The god Quetzalcoatl, who is said to have originated from a cross, was the subject of an Aztec mythology. Legend has it that there was once a boat that paddled itself across the sea. Quetzalcoatl was the one who imparted knowledge that was previously unheard of, including how to build pyramids. But now we have yet another odd coincidence. The ancient inhabitants of Mexico immortalized this event in stone by representing a person bestowing gifts of supernatural knowledge. This picture of superhumans passing on their knowledge is not only prevalent in Aztec culture. It appears to be a typical modern bag, isn't that right? Yet, instances of old sages passing on wisdom may be found all throughout the world. These are found on the preserved walls in the most obscure areas of Göbekli Tepe, even in Sumerian arts and crafts and temples. Yet, if we make the assumption that explorers from a distant civilization were able to travel across the seas with ease and impart their wisdom to the apes, this would imply that their level of development was comparable to that of our 20th centuries, practically making such a civilization extinct. In a recent piece in Scientific Publications, Without a Trace, the findings of extensive excavations conducted close to the Jordanian village of Tel El Hammam were revealed by U.S. researchers. Unexpectedly, a 1.5-meter earth layer made solely of burnt organic matter, ash, and bone fragments was discovered to have been the scene of a 1650 BC space tragedy. Scientists frantically searched for at least some reference of such a tragedy, as this settlement was quickly devastated by the explosion of a hitherto undiscovered meteorite. But all they discovered were biblical traditions about the real burning of Sodom and Gomorrah to the ground. So I believe myths aren't always made up, and although while such a catastrophe wouldn't have been sufficient to wipe out an entire civilization, there is an old legend about a worldwide catastrophe that may also turn out to have some truth to it. The Great Flood legend is mentioned not only in the Bible but also in the myths of the American Indians and even in Australian legends. If the deluge was actually there, ancient Finns and indigenous people alike even connected this occurrence to the end of the world. According to some evidence, the so-called cataclysmic event on our planet took place about 13 to 15,000 years ago, putting even an advanced ancient civilization in danger. According to one theory, every storm on our globe was roaring at once. But what possible causes are found in soil samples from that time period? The deposits known as nanodiamonds are small crystals that are the product of comet or asteroid collisions. But where is the vortex if the impact is what generated the flood? The majority of nanodiamonds, according to research by analytical chemist Richard Firestone of the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory in California, are discovered in soil samples from North America. But back then, the entirety of what is now Canada was covered in a thick ice crust, making it vulnerable to being struck by a comet. But the sudden melting of a massive amount of ice might produce a catastrophic wave and, as a result, a worldwide flood. It's not a given that it could wipe out a whole civilization all at once. The few survivors might conceivably relocate to other locations on the Earth to try to resurrect. The former greatness meant that they also shared some of their wisdom with less advanced civilizations. It's remarkable, but according to the dating of the secret survivors, Apocalypse might have been responsible for creating Göbekli Tepe in the interim. While the rest of humanity already possessed the required technology and was able to work well with others, they were hunting and gathering. However, if human beings had built such a huge structure, tired by calamities, one wonders what they were actually capable of at the height of their power and whether they had advanced technology. Why couldn't we discover it? Despite the fact that we think of ourselves as a relatively advanced society, our contributions to planet history have undoubtedly been notable. If our civilization vanishes in 200 years from now, we may have severely overestimated ourselves. After 1,000 years, the world won't have any remnants of any human-cultivated vegetation. With the exception of the few remaining megacities, urban areas will virtually vanish. We've just discovered something akin to the stones strewn across the world. The underwater Bimini Road, which lies close to the Bahamas, is known as the Atlantis Highway. It is 700 meters long and is made up of well-placed limestone blocks. It is still debatable where the structure actually came from. Scientists disagree on the most logical reason. If the ocean level had been substantially lower when the ancient civilization was surrounding in earlier times, prior to the catastrophic flood, where may this huge road lead? Given that it would be simple to travel to the majority of other continents from Antarctica, which hadn't yet been covered by ice just as it's stated on the old map, perhaps one day, such highways across practically the entire Earth don't sound outlandish at all. Under the ice, there will be the remains of huge metropolises. But there is one issue if an unidentified ancient society was that advanced. For roughly 15 million years and only a few tens of thousands of years, if humans were to vanish, the glass and plastic in our structures and equipment would begin to break down. Because all of our plastic comes from crude oil, ancient humans may have either failed to locate it at all or thought it was useless. We would have undoubtedly discovered similar remnants of the prior society. It's also likely that they abandoned after figuring out how detrimental synthetic materials are to the environment. To put it another way, their production, like that of civilization, might be entirely organic and leave no traces. But how the degree of development is determined not by technology so much as by the organization of society, and if the old wise men hadn't used plastics the way we do, they could have found other methods to organize. Despite what we might think, ancient societies might not always have been primitive. David Graeber, an American anthropologist, came to this conclusion after researching numerous possible structures of prehistoric human societies. For instance, when even our civilization was only beginning to emerge. There may be tribes where the roles of slaves and chieftains alternate every few months, allowing them to alter not only their own possessions but also their social status. Yet even names return to normal after a while, according to everything in his book. The Beginning of Everything. He talks about the primitive tribes, which were made up only of eccentric people who purposefully didn't follow any hierarchies. It's possible that these tribes' use of similar principles of social organization helped an unidentified ancient civilization find alternative paths to development and advance much more quickly. Simply expressed, even on the basis of technology that seem natural and undetectable to us now. The fact that a highly advanced ancient civilization is so obscure may not even be the problem. Simply put, because of our prejudices, it's really challenging for us to see it. Only one day. If we can rise above them, we might be able to complete the mosaic of a long-gone civilization that has only left us hints. Nonetheless, there may be some areas where ancient people and ourselves are similar. An explosion that is 10,000 times brighter is described in the Hindu epic Mahabharata. Suns followed by a massive plume of smoke and fire. That sounds eerily like a nuclear explosion, doesn't it? Rose and the birds dropped dead on the ground. If a highly developed ancient society did exist, I can't even begin to picture what it may have looked like. Thanks for watching.